welcome to this week's faith formation lesson. So we're going to continue on with what we were learning from last week. So if you remember, we learned about the spiritual works of mercy, which is basically a way that the church and Jesus gives us to serve other people, to help them come closer to Jesus in their own spiritual lives. Well, this week we're going to learn about the other kind of work of mercy, and that's called the corporal works of mercy. And now that's kind of a big word, and maybe you've never heard it before, but basically corporal comes from the word body, like having to do with our actual bodies. So corporal works of mercy, rather than pertaining just to helping people spiritually, this is to helping people in a very physical, practical way. That as Catholics, as Christians, we're supposed to help people go closer to Jesus, but we're also just supposed to help them with their day-to-day needs. We need to help them just if they're having a hard time. The church and Jesus through the church tells us that it's our duty as Christians, as Catholics, to help people and to give people what they need. So the cool thing about the corporal works of mercy is that they come directly from Jesus in the Bible. So Jesus very specifically told us about how we should do these things, and it's in the book of Matthew chapter 12. So we're going to read it. I got my Bible right here. If you've got your Bible, you can follow along at home. So this is Matthew chapter 25, verse 34 through 45. All right. Then the king will say to those on his right, "Come, you who are blessed by my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me food. I was thirsty, and you gave me drink. I was a stranger, and you welcomed me. I was naked, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you cared for me. I was in prison, and you visited me." Then the righteous will answer him and say, "Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you drink? When did we see you as a stranger and welcome you, or naked and clothe you? When did we see you ill or in prison and visit you?" And the king said in reply, "Amen, I say to you, whatever you did for one of the least brothers of mine, you did for me." But then he said to those on his left, "Depart from me, you accursed, into the eternal fire prepared for the devil and his angels. For I was hungry, and you gave me no food. I was thirsty, and you gave me no drink. A stranger, and you gave me no welcome. Naked, and you gave me no clothing. Ill and in prison, and you did not care for me." Then they will answer and say, "Lord, when did we see you hungry, or thirsty, or a stranger, or naked, or sick, or in prison, and not minister to your needs?" And he will answer them, "Amen, I say to you, what you did not do for one of the least ones, you did not do for me." Wow, so I think that is a pretty powerful verse, and we're going to break that down as we delve into the corporal works of mercy. So before we dive in, I think it's pretty clear from that Bible passage that these are really important, right? Jesus is saying that when we serve other people, we're not just serving other people. Serving and helping other people is a really good thing. But it's more than just that. When we serve and help other people, we're serving and helping Jesus. And when we don't help other people, when we turn away, when we ignore other people when they need our help, we're ignoring Jesus. That's pretty bad, right? It's really bad to ignore other people, but to ignore Jesus, that's even worse. So that's why it's so important that we help other people through the corporal works of mercy. So we are going to break down the works of mercy next. So the first work of mercy is to give food to the hungry. So this is pretty practical, right? It's pretty clear. But you might be thinking, well, how can I do that in my everyday life, right? Especially being a kid, it's kind of hard to, go out and do things. But some ideas that you could do is you could maybe give food to a homeless person. Sometimes when you're driving around, you'll see a homeless person on the side of the road. Maybe you could ask your mom, maybe next time you're going to go in an area where you know there'll be homeless people, maybe bring a sandwich along and give a sandwich to them. Or you could donate food to a food pantry. We actually have a group here at St. Anthony that meets every week and collects food, so that's a great way that you can give food to the hungry. You can volunteer at a homeless shelter with your family, or you could just do this in your daily life. You could get lunch for your little brothers and sisters, or you could help your mom make dinner. You're helping out your own family and they're hungry, right? So you're giving food to the hungry when you make food for your little siblings, when you help your mom make dinner. So the next one is kind of similar. It's give drink to the thirsty, and I think a lot of what we just said falls under that same category. All those same things that we just talked about you could do. You could, again, volunteer at a shelter. You could maybe something really small, really simple, just if you're with your family, ask them, hey, can I get you anything to drink? And just go up and serve them in that way. Go to the kitchen, get them some water, get them, whatever they're thirsty for. And that's just a really small, simple way you can help give drink to the thirsty. And this one idea that I found I think is really cool and really creative, and something that's pretty easy to do as a kid, is you could have a lemonade stand, and that would be giving drink to the thirsty, but then you could donate the money that you make at the lemonade stand to people who are maybe poor, who need food, who need drink. So that's a really cool thing that maybe you could do as a kid that would be helpful. I know one time for me when I was younger, there was a big hurricane that hit, Hurricane Katrina. You guys probably don't remember that, but it was a long time ago. But I was about your age when that happened, and me and my friends, we baked a bunch of cookies and brownies, and we sold them to people in our neighborhood, and we made a lot of money, and then we donated that money to the people who needed help from the hurricane. So that's a really cool idea that you can do with your friends, with your siblings, to try to help other people and give food and drink to the hungry and to the thirsty. So the next one is shelter the homeless. And this might be a hard thing to do, especially since you don't have your own home, your kids, right? You live at your parents' home. You can't really invite strangers in. That's probably not a good idea for you to do anyways. But, Christ calls us to help the homeless. So again, like we talked about, maybe volunteering at a homeless shelter, maybe finding a way to donate even just a little bit of money, or maybe you have some extra toys, some extra blankets around your house that you could donate to people in need. So there's all kinds of ways that we can help people who are poor and who are homeless. So I invite you to be creative. Think of some ways that you can do that. They could be really small, but sometimes, actually every time, a little bit of active service, a little bit of love goes a really long way. So get creative, and I will be really interested to hear your ideas. So the next one is clothe the naked. So you might be thinking, how am I going to do that? I don't really see many naked people walking around, which is good. But so what Jesus means by that is by giving clothes to people who need it, to the people who are poor. So some ways you could do that are buy and donate coats for people who need them. You could clean out your closet and donate to an organization or maybe a family Again, if you have clothes that don't fit you anymore, you don't need. You and your family, you can collect baby items. Maybe you have some baby things around that you and your little siblings don't use anymore. You can donate that to moms who are in need. Or maybe you could have a garage sale and sell some of your old things and donate that money to charity. So I encourage you to think of different ways you can do this too. So the next one is comfort the sick. So that is a really important one right now. There's a lot of sick people with COVID-19 happening. So this is really important, and it can be hard to do, especially if the people who are sick are quarantined. But there are ways we can help out. We can maybe, if there's someone that who's sick, you could drop off a meal for them. You could ask your mom if there's anyone that you know of that you can help her make a meal and drop it off for them. Maybe you could write little cards for people in the hospital who are sick. You could do that, or people who are in nursing homes, some elderly people. And then if nothing else, you can always pray for them too, and that is so good and so important. Just pray that Jesus comforts them and he heals them. So the next one is visit the imprisoned. And again, this might be hard considering, as a kid, you probably can't / probably shouldn't be going into prisons, but you can definitely pray for people who are in prison. And there are different groups where maybe you could write a card for someone who was in prison, or maybe your family could donate a care package, something to help care for the people who are in prison, because we're all children of God and we're called to love everybody, no matter what they've done or who they are. And sometimes the people in prison are the people who are the most forgotten, right? So, if there's any way we can reach out, there are different groups and different organizations where you can write a letter, you can send a package to people who are in prison, and just be the love of God to them. And the last one is bury the dead. So it's pretty self-explanatory. If someone has unfortunately sadly passed away, if you're able to go to the funeral, to send cards or flowers to their family, or make food for someone whose family is either sick or passed away. And then another thing you could do is you can go to a graveyard. There's graveyards pretty much everywhere. You can go and you could pray for the people there. You could look at the names on the headstones and just specifically pray for those people. Or maybe if you've had a family member who's passed away, maybe a grandpa or a grandma or someone, you can pray for them and for their soul. And that's a way we can live out that work of mercy of burying the dead. So, like I said, we're all called to live out the corporal works of mercy as Catholics, but sometimes in the Catholic Church, there's certain people that really live this out in a really radical, crazy, really amazing way that maybe not everybody does. And I think a really great example of that is a saint. And this is a saint, so she grew up, she was just a normal little girl, she grew up in a normal family, she went to school, went to church, did pretty much all the things that you do. But when she was about 10 years old, she started to have a feeling of she wanted to do something really, really big with her life. She wanted to do something amazing for Jesus. And sometimes she would hear stories about missionaries who would go far away across the ocean and help really, really poor people. And she thought, wow, that's amazing. I really want to do that someday. And sure enough, those thoughts she had as a little kid when she was just about, your age, not saying that you're a little kid, but she had it when she was a little kid and when she was a big kid. But she still had those desires as she got older. And through those desires, Jesus was actually calling her to do something really amazing with her life. And when she was 18, she became a sister, a nun. I don't know if you've ever seen a nun. They wear the veils and the habits. And she was a nun for a number of years. But then she felt a call that Jesus wanted her to do something very specific. She felt a call in her heart that he was calling her to love him and serve him through the poorest of the poor. So meaning, there's lots of poor people in the world, but she felt called to go to the people who were the absolute poorest. So she ended up starting another religious order of nuns and sisters in a place called Calcutta in India. And this place was and I think still is really one of the poorest places in the world. There were people, just tons of people with no homes. They would dig through the trash for food. They would be really sick, and they had no one to care for them, so they would just be dying in the street, and just really horrible things. And it was so bad that no one wanted to go there. Even other missionary groups, it was just too bad. It was too gross. It was too sad. They didn't want to go there. There's they're too far gone. But Mother Teresa, that's the saint. I don't know if you've heard of her before. Saint Mother Teresa, at the time, she knew that Jesus was calling her to love the absolute poorest, these people that everybody else had forgotten about, that everyone else was too scared to take care of. She said, no, I'm going to love them. And that's what she did. She spent her whole life, and she did amazing things, and she changed the world, and she helped so many people. She would take people who were on the streets dying, whose families had abandoned them, who had nobody else to love them. She would take them, she would pick them up. She was this little tiny woman, but she would pick them up, she would bring them to the place, the hospital that the sisters had, and she would take care of them, and she would love them, and she would give them food and water, and she would wash their wounds, and she would give them clothing. And a lot of them had an illness called leprosy. I don't know if you've heard it before, but it's a really terrible disease that sometimes people in poorer countries get, where your skin is infected, and it could be really gross and really smelly, and sometimes you even have body parts that fall off, and it's a scary disease, and no one really wants to touch them, because if you touch them, then you could get the disease. So these poor people were sick and dying alone, and everyone was scared of them, because they were scared that if they were touched by them, then they would get sick too. But Mother Teresa wasn't afraid, because she knew that she was called to love and that Jesus would protect her. So she would love them, she would hold them, she would kiss the lepers with their wounds, and she would carry them and wash them. And she did everything that we just talked about, all those works of mercy, of food and water, and clothing the naked, and burying the dead, and visiting people that were in prison. She did all of it, and she lived just an amazing, incredible life. Sometimes people would ask Mother Teresa. I remember hearing one time, they would ask her why she loved the poor so much. Why did she do this? I mean, it was really gross work sometimes. It was really hard, and people just couldn't understand, why? Why do you do this? Why did you give your whole life to serve these people that nobody else cares about? And sometimes when people would ask her that, she would take their hand, she would grab their hand, and she would grasp their fingers, and each finger she would kind of slowly wiggle it, and she would say for each finger, "You did it to me. You did it to me." And what she was saying there is she was quoting that Bible passage that we just read. Remember, Jesus said, these apostles said, "Wait, when did we, clothe you when you were naked? When did we give you food?" All those things. And he was saying, when you did it to other people, when you did it to your neighbor, to your brother and sister, you were actually doing it to me. So that's how she was able to love the poor and love everybody and do the corporal works of mercy so much, is because she didn't just see it as doing it just because she should. She saw it as she was doing it to Jesus, to Christ. You did it to me. And I think she's really amazing. She's a really big inspiration. And if you feel maybe you feel wow, someday it would be so cool to be a missionary like Mother Teresa. That's awesome. She started thinking about that when she was about your age too. You're never too young to start, praying with God and dreaming with God for the amazing plans He has for your life. So maybe you would really like to do that. Let me know if that's something that sounds interesting to you, is serving Jesus in a really radical way. So that's our lesson for today. The same homework as last week. I like to call it an assignment more than homework. I think that's a little more fun. So our assignment for this week is, same as last week, is I'm going to ask you to do a corporal work of mercy. So just one of those things. It could be in a big way, it could be in a small way. Ask your parents for help, and I'm really excited to hear about what you do and what you learn. All right, I'll talk to you next week. Bye, guys.